Hi, everyone. Welcome to Magic in Media, the podcast brought to you by the Vibe Collective and me, Carly D., a reader and manager here at the Vibe Collective. This podcast blends magic with the current pop culture news moments to show you that magic is all around us every day. We just have to look around and find it. So we find the metaphysical and magic in the world all around us and share it with you. So welcome to this week's episode. We are a week away from Christmas Eve. So we are recording on the 17th. Today's the 17th, and the Winter Solstice is this weekend. So we are going to talk about the Winter Solstice coming up. We have a Winter Solstice restorative yoga class tomorrow night at 7 p.m. EST. Tickets are still available for that event. So if you are interested in a restorative yoga class that also blends meditation and some light drumming with Angelia, I highly recommend it. And that is going to be December 18th, virtually at 7 p.m. And we will be recording it and selling the recording as well if you are looking for a way to celebrate or really set intention with the winter solstice. So that is a big thing that we have coming up this weekend is the winter solstice, which is on Saturday. Basically, I say like the 19th, the 20th, but Saturday, the 20th is the winter solstice, the longest day of the year, where we really honor the light, honor the darkness. It's an honoring of both, but really how we use them together, right? When it is these dark, cold winter months, we must find the light, not only externally, but within as well. And that is a lot of what winter solstice is about. So if you are looking for something to do for the winter solstice, the Vibe definitely has some things that you can do. Another interesting and exciting astrological thing we have happening this week is the Sagittarius New Moon on Friday, the 19th, December 19th. So we have a really stacked energetic week when it comes to like magic and the metaphysical around us, because not only is obviously Christmas coming up next week, so lots of us are, running our errands and setting our plans, getting our last minute gifts together and wrapped. We also have this new moon in Sagittarius on the 19th, and we have the winter solstice. So we are going to be feeling some stuff, right? Feeling some energy come up, and we are going to talk about at the end of the podcast the Sagittarius new moon. That is going to be our third topic, and we are going to tie in some what you can do this week to bring magic into your life with the Sagittarius new moon, which is our last new moon of the year, of course. So we want to make sure that we are using this new moon to set some really good intentions, and we will talk more about that. But we have some other topics to jump into first. And this first topic I'm really excited about. This story is actually a lot of where I got the inspiration from to do this podcast. So magic in media was really birthed because I would see stuff happening in media all the time. Even just thinking like album releases, movies coming out, certain like things happening like in the public eye. And if they had a magical or especially like an astrology association, like seeing where that connects magically with what we're seeing in the world of media and entertainment, especially if you're someone who is chronically online like me. I just kind of know all the random entertainment and media news and facts. But all that to say, we started this podcast so we could connect the dots for you, right? And really explain to people what people are talking about when they're talking about things like tarot, Reiki, astrology, and the media, because I don't think it's explored fully, right? Like we're seeing people talk about astrology here and there, but no one is going super in depth. So this podcast is a way for you to learn more about what people are saying in the media when it comes to topics like crystals, tarot, mediumship, psychics, anything like that. So that is really the inspiration for this podcast. If there's ever something you are interested in or you're questioning about in the metaphysical and media world and connections, let us know, because I would love to see what kind of stuff is out there that connects to the metaphysical that is making you guys think more and what you'd want to know more about it. So Yeah, that's just a little entry into our first story, which is about Saturn returns and Rachel Sennott talking about them a lot on her press tour. So, if you do not know who Rachel Sennott is, she is a actress, producer, director, writer of this new show on HBO called I Love LA. And this show, I Love LA, is very like Sex in the City or Girls for Gen Z. So if you're familiar with those shows, Sex in the City and Girls, they're stories based around like four characters, four female characters a lot of the time. I will say in I Love LA, one of the four is a gay man, really, instead of a woman. So that's a change up that is really cool. And again, just bringing in this next generation. So of course it's its own show, but really I Love LA is like this next take of these kind of traditional way of telling like female stories, but in Gen Z. So it's very funny, very witty, lots of puns and talking about influencer lifestyle, media lifestyle, and all this kind of new way of consuming information online from videos and YouTube and vloggers and what that looks like in LA now. So it is very of the times. But why we are talking about this show is because the person who created it, Rachel Sennott, has been talking a lot about Saturn returns and her Saturn return on her press tour for the show. So we are going to talk about Saturn returns, what it means, what it would mean for you, and how it affects you, how you can learn a little bit more about your own Saturn return, and yeah, just what it means. So Saturn returns affect you at the end of your 20s and early 30s. So in a lot of these interviews that she's been on, she was on like Jimmy Kimmel. I listened to Las Culturistas with Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers. She talked about it on there too. But in these interviews, she's asking people about their Saturn returns and what they think was their Saturn return in their late 20s, early 30s, or the theme of what their Saturn return is. And in these interviews, I see what she's trying to do, like see where they learned their lesson in the Saturn return. But we are going to talk about how you can even kind of look at your own chart and see where your Saturn return would be too. But let's start at the beginning of what Saturn represents. And really what a Saturn return is when you are in your late 20s. So it starts around like when you're 27 or 30, big changes in your life or the big changes in Saturn in your chart. And I know that sounds like a lot of gibberish if you don't know what astrology means, which is why we're going to talk about it. So, Saturn in astrology symbolizes responsibility and discipline, structures, limits, boundaries, time, maturity, long-term commitments, consequences, karma, and life lessons. There's a lot tied into this, but the idea of it is that a Saturn return really wakes you up when you're in your late 20s and kind of puts a new sense of responsibility on you. It's like entering a new era of adulthood. But I will say, like it says here with consequences and karma, there is a reputation for it being hard trials, right? Trying times, challenges that are testing these things about us, testing these things that really our Saturn is in more specifically. But what are our limits? What are our boundaries? Where do we really need to wake up and see things for what they truly are instead of just what has been happening or has been working? So for your own Saturn return, what you would do is see what house in astrology in your birth chart, what house your Saturn is in. And then that would show you where you will see more of your personal Saturn return. So in astrology, each house represents something different in your life. So like one house is like early childhood, one is family, one is your health, one is your reputation, one is your money, one is your career. So you can look up what the different houses mean in astrology. There are 12 of them, and see where your Saturn is. So if you use any like astrology apps or anything that has your chart, see which number house 1 through 12 your Saturn is in. Your Saturn will also be in a sign, and that would mean it would either be your Saturn is in Pisces or it's in Aries. That as well is going to factor into a little bit of how it will affect you personally. But I think that a way for you to kind of start is to see which house your Saturn is in, look up what that house means, and then know that your Saturn return is somehow going to connect to that theme of that house. So very interesting. Yeah, so like in theory, if you have a Saturn in your your seventh house is your house of relationships. So you're probably going to see a lot of shifts and trials in your relationships in your seventh house. So it can be a little like scary to think about it in that way of challenges, but I just kind of tell people it's really a place for us to grow, or we can. And the cool thing about astrology is it is like a blueprint of you. So if you look up which house your Saturn return is going to be in, you can kind of start to look around, pay attention to those things in your life and maybe where that growth needs to happen, or like you'll see it yourself, the connections between what's happening currently in your Saturn return and the house. So yeah, that is how you could find really what it is for you personally. Look up what your Saturn, what house it's in, look up what that house represents, and that will be a lot of what your lesson is in that late 20s, early 30s Saturn return. So what is a Saturn return like? So it is often described as a rite of passage into adulthood or a new chapter of life. So it brings major life evaluations and major life changes, pressure to grow up, like we said, to really see things for what they are, to grow up and take responsibility. And it is a lot of the time the ending of unstable relationships, jobs, and habits, a push toward building something that is more solid and long lasting. So why I think a lot of people see it as a challenge or trial is because a lot of the time our Saturn return is going to end something that is unstable, whether that be a relationship, so it will be a breakup, or a job, so it means a job transition, or going into a new career change. I will say that is probably what I see a majority of people's Saturn returns in, right? In your career, or what I call like purpose. In a lot of my readings, your life purpose, your jobs or relationships. So lots of people will honestly like leave a career or leave a job in their Saturn return, or leave a relationship. And that's just like very real and true of Saturn returns. But it is a lot of like shedding and letting go of what we need to move forward into this next thing, which isn't always easy, right? It's hard to leave what we're comfortable with. And I think a lot of what your Saturn return is pushing your limits, pushing your boundaries. And that's why it does feel hard and feel like a challenge, but it is pushing you to grow. So it's kind of like, do you grow or stay where you are? And I will tell you, your Saturn return is going to keep pushing you and pushing you if you fight the growth that needs to happen. And I really think that if you've already had a Saturn return, then you can even think in that way, right? I tried to fight certain things that I knew, like even intuitively, weren't right for me anymore. And eventually, I always say in my readings, the universe whispers and then it shouts, right? So if your Saturn return is coming and you're already hearing those whispers, pay attention to them now before it turns into shouting. And while a Saturn return can feel heavy or challenging, it's less about punishment and, like we said, more about course correction, right? And getting on track for this next phase of adulthood. Because your 20s are really like, you're just learning, right? We're baby adults. When you're in your 30s, you've got some more time, some more knowledge, more relationships, more character building under your belt. And now we really need to see where we're at, where we're on course with it. Ariana Grande has a little like interlude Saturn return song on her Eternal Sunshine album as well. And literally in it, she's like, wake up. It's time to see yourself for who you truly are. And you can't just get by on your cleverness and your wit anymore. And that is so true of Saturn returns, is it's going to get real with you, of we can't just get by on what we've been doing in our 20s, kind of like cutesy, cool. Like we need to get serious about our life, So check out the Ariana Grande Saturn return song too. another way that magic shows up in media. So, common themes that people experience are what we have talked about, like career changes, changing of your purpose, relationship commitments or breakups, confronting fears or avoidance. So, things, relationships, maybe even that we've been avoiding or we need to heal, like family relationships can come up a lot, setting boundaries and choosing long term stability over short term comfort. So, long term, that's why we see a lot of changes in jobs, right? A lot of the time we probably outgrew that job that we had in our 20s. So we need something now that is more long term, right? That is more stable in the end. But it also is about, I feel, setting boundaries on our habits, right? We're asked to grow up a little more, be more serious, especially if you're getting into more serious things in your 30s, like parenting, marriage, home ownership, business ownership. You need to be more serious, have more boundaries than you did when you were younger. And there is a little bit of a learning curve that comes with that when you're in your early 30s. So, like we said, a big thing people experiences are those changes in job, career, relationships, but also think about confronting fears or finally doing things that you've longed to do or you know you're called to do and you just step up and do it, right? Going for that dream job, going maybe to live in that dream place that you've always wanted to, but it seemed unattainable, right? It's really pushing yourself to set a stable ground for this next phase of your life. So the deeper meaning of your Saturn return is really asking is, are you living in alignment with values and and taking responsibility for your life, right? Are you living an aligned life? Are you doing what you want to be doing? Are you taking responsibility for it? Or are you avoiding growth? Because it can feel like a lot sometimes. So if you have been doing the work in your Saturn return and you are paying attention to those things and we're not ignoring or trying to escape the responsibility, then you can get through your Saturn return for sure. I think the worst thing we can do is just continue to ignore the very obvious signs around us of things that need to change, things we need to improve on. And I'm not saying it happens overnight. Your Saturn return, like we said, is from like usually age 27 to 31, 32. This is like a years, like chunk of years. When I was leading up to my own Saturn return, I remember looking it up and being nervous for the theme of my Saturn return, what I knew I was going to face. And it was a lot. It was challenging. It was challenging. It was pushing. It was everything of the themes that I was predicted for me. The chart, my own chart, was very telling, very spot on of what I went through in my Saturn return. And it is, like I said, years, but it's nothing. I don't want people to be scared about it. Talking about this, it is a time of challenge, a time of growth, but it is necessary. So the worst thing you can do is fight it. So don't be scared. Face the fears. There's so much more to Saturn returns than even what we're covering in the podcast today. So if you want to know more about Saturn returns, definitely book an astrology reading with Carly D. She talked me through mine. Pretty much everything she said was true and came to be. So yeah, it's definitely something to look into, to check out. Carly is an amazing astrologer and she can break all this down for you in a way that really makes sense so you can start to prepare. And that's what I love about astrology is that, like I said before, it's this blueprint of you. So if you know what's coming or what to expect, you can better prepare yourself for it, right? So get a reading with Carly D, an astrology reading through the Vibe Collective, a birth chart reading. Ask her about your Saturn return specifically if you're in your late 20s, and she will hook you up. Now, our next story is back on our Christmas theme. We have Christmas coming next week, and we are going to still have a special episode of Magic and Media next week. But I wanted to do a little Christmas story this week that has, I guess, spooky, creepy, like, is the right word for it. But basically, yeah, I wanted to find a traditional story, like a Yule story, folklore story that explains kind of why we do certain things during the holidays. And the biggest, not the biggest, but one of the biggest things we think of with the holidays is Santa Claus and have you been naughty or have you been nice, right? It's this call of were you good or were you bad, right? Huge duality in this big aspect of Christmas. So there are tons of stories and folklore stories that explain, this origin of how it came to be naughty and nice, how to be good, and how we now have taken that tradition and changed it. So we are going to talk about the tradition of the Yule Cat, which is a folklore tradition. It's an Icelandic Christmas folklore tradition. We're going to talk about this and how it affects even now traditions that we use around Christmas. And then I think really why I chose this idea of Christmas folklore is that idea of duality, right? I'm the resident Gemini here at the Vibe Collective, and duality is huge for Geminis, right? Good and bad, light and shadow. So black and white. So with this tradition, it is exploring that idea of duality of what is good and what is bad, right? And that we use these traditions to encourage people and children to be good, to be selfless. And that's where a lot of the naughty and nice list comes from. So this is the tradition of the Yule Cat. In Iceland, they tell of a creature called the Yule Cat, a vast black cat with glowing eyes that prowl the snow during Christmas time. The Yule Cat comes down from the mountains on Christmas Eve, padding silently between farms and villages. It peers through windows and sniffs at doorways, searching for one thing only: those who have not received new clothes for the winter. Long ago, new clothes meant you had worked hard during the year, spinning wool, helping with the harvest, and pulling your weight before the dark winter season arrived. So anyone who was lazy, selfish, or refused to help was said to be fair game for the Yule Cat. So if the Yule Cat found you empty-handed with no new clothes for Christmas, it would take you. Some say it would eat you, others say it dragged you into the snow, never to be seen again. And to this day, Icelandic children are given new socks or mittens at Christmas, not just as gifts, but as protection from the Yule Cat. And when the wind howls outside and something brushes the walls, parents still warn, best check you've got something new to wear tonight, because the Yule Cat is always hungry and it never forgets who did not earn their place by the fire. So that is the Icelandic story of the Yule Cat. And this even attributes to think of how we put stockings by the fire. And there's a whole other folklore story connected to the stockings by the fire, but we're not going to talk about that one today. The Yule Cat enforces again this idea of working hard, being moral, helping with the harvest, earning your keep, and earning your gifts, your presents, which is obviously the same kind of idea that we use now with Christmas, right? If you're good and you behave and you're a good kid, then you get your Christmas presents. But in a lot of these folklore stories, what I mean of, what makes them kind of like spooky or scary is a lot of, especially these Eastern European or European folklore stories, is there is an element of like kids basically being like taken away, much scarier than just not getting your presents from Santa, right? They were basically like, be good or a cat is going to come drag you into the forest forever. Or Krampus, is going to come and snatch you up. And he's like this evil, scary monster. In Europe, lots of towns will still have a Krampus night where basically you go take your child to be like scared by Krampus to behave, so that way they aren't taken away by Krampus like on Christmas Eve. So yeah, that is what I kind of think is interesting about all of these folklore stories, is how we've changed it up a little bit since then, but a lot of them do have a more intense, I would say, origin. Some So these traditions of having the idea of being good or bad really kept people behaving in a moral and good way. There is another European folklore story of Frau Perchta, which is a story of a witch who would basically attack your family, and if you didn't leave porridge out for her a night around in if you didn't leave porridge out for her in the winter. This taught you to be selfless and giving, and then Frau Prachta wouldn't come and attack your family because you let her have some of your porridge. So again, teaching children to be moral, teaching them to be selfless, caring, and looking out for others. But it has that spooky, creepy vibe of, again, the Frau or the witch will attack your family if you don't do it. So scared into submission for sure was the theme of a lot of this folklore, but we definitely still use it with the idea of the naughty and the nice list. So yeah, basically think of scaring people into being good around the holidays and the tradition that is behind that. But I wanted to share another kind of fun Christmas tradition. So that is the Yule Cat for you all. If you have not heard of the Yule Cat, now you have. And I especially chose that story because I have 2 black cats myself. So if you are a black cat owner, you might have a little special affinity for that black Yule Cat. Now, our final topic for this week is the new moon in Sagittarius on December 19th. On Friday, December 19th, we will have the final new moon of the year. And new moons are about setting intentions, fresh starts, manifesting, and creating something new. So Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which is the planet of luck. So this is a very good manifesting new moon, especially with that little extra like wink from Jupiter with luck. And when we're thinking fresh starts with a new moon already, think of the fresh start we have coming with next year. So on this new moon, in our last new moon of the year, maybe you do start thinking of some intentions for the new year or some resolutions that you're going to take seriously, and you write them down or start journaling about habits you want to improve on and fresh starts that you want to have into next year. And I think just even getting those wheels turning for your resolutions in 2026 is a good way to utilize the energy of this new moon. Now, Sagittarius also has a strong connection to travel. So maybe you could think of a big trip that you want to take in 2026 and make a vision board or a Pinterest board of that trip, what it looks like, how you want to feel on it, where you want to go, what places you want to visit, what museums or shows you'd want to see, and really get real with it, with like what a dream trip would be for you in 2026, and start using the Sagittarius energy to get the manifestation going for that dream trip. Now, Sagittarius are a fire sign, and they are a mutable fire sign. And mutable means that they are changeable. So they adapt well to new circumstances and things that are differing or changing. They also want to expand their horizons and learn more. So if there is something you want to learn more about, I would take some time this new moon dedicating your energy to looking up courses, or maybe doing like a virtual tour of a museum that has a subject or topic about something that you want to learn more about. Maybe you pick up a book on a topic that you've been wanting to get into, but this is again another good way to expand your horizons and really lean into something new. Something to be careful about though, with the way that Sagittarius like new things and travel, is to be wary of escapism, right? Don't just use these new things or these new trips to escape the reality of what you have going in the day to day. Sagittarius like a lot of new and exciting things, but we have to make sure we're not leaning into it to the point of escapism. Now, each sign also rules a part of the body. So Sagittarius rules our hips, our thighs, our hamstrings, and our liver. So if you want to connect to your Sagittarius like body this new moon, maybe do some extra stretches for like your thighs, your hamstrings, your hips. You know, if you're a yoga person, this would be a really good time to do like a hip flexors class or stretch out your hips. And also with the liver, you know, maybe lay off, you know, some drinks this weekend and give your liver some some extra love, lots of like water, maybe a little detox would be good for this new moon, especially before we go into the hustle and bustle of the holidays. And liver is detoxing, right? So it really may be a good weekend to detox and rest before the hubbub of Christmas Eve and Christmas next week. So, for your what you can do this week to tap into the magic of the Sagittarius new moon is try new things. But I encourage you to even go more specific with this of try maybe picking a new recipe that you've maybe had saved on Pinterest or you've seen a couple times and you've thought, "Oh, I've really wanted to make that," but you never have, but you've had the desire to, right? And I say use like a recipe because this is simple. You got to eat, you got to make dinner. So use something as simple as, making dinner to set intention and tap into that Sagittarius new moon energy. So pick a new recipe of something you've never made before, your very first time, and try something new. Get out of your comfort zone with this Sagittarius new moon and try something you haven't tried before. So let that be your what you can do this week to find the magic in your life. Try something new and try making a new recipe, something completely new, extra bonus points if it's something that is a challenge and a hard recipe that you've been looking at for a while and maybe that's what's stopped you from going for it. Use this new moon to give you that momentum to step out of your comfort zone and try something new. And this is something little, right? But if we do little things like this and then we see, oh, what you make it and it's delicious and it's amazing, it just encourages you to try other new things in life and step out of your comfort zone a little more. And I keep saying that, get out of your comfort zone, because I feel that message is a little whisper for all of us this week as we step into 2026. Because Sagittarius is so that, right? Get out of your comfort zone. Let that be your message this week. If you take anything from the podcast this week, let that be it, that you are getting out of your comfort zone and trying something new in this Sagittarius new moon. So that is our episode for this week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you liked our stories. And again, if there is something in media that you're seeing that you want to know more about, message us, let us know. We'd be happy to tap into some different subjects. And we will have an episode up next week, even with the holiday. So make sure you keep your eyes open for that. Have a great week. And as always, find the magic in your own life.